Welcome to another live stream with Lionheart Discipleship. I'm going to turn that off. I think we might be getting some feedback in there. Still, honestly, quite getting used to the streaming software and going live on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook all at the same time. So I am still getting my head around that. So bear with me here. I'm going to turn my comments on here. You should be able to leave a comment. Cool. So today we're going to talk about the Hallow app and what's gone on with the Hallow app. Some of you may be familiar with Kennedy Hall and his channel. He's done a pretty deep dive in about 20 minutes. He did a really good job covering what's gone on over at Hallow. But there has been hardly any coverage of, I think, what is a little bit of a scandal. Not that we're supposed to allow ourselves to purposely be scandalized. There's no real benefit in that. But I think a lot of people are walking around with the Hallow app on their phone, using it to reflect on the gospel, using it to pray the rosary. I know that is the reason that my family and I were using it. But there were a couple of good, trustworthy people who I trust, who I listen to, and I take as a bit of an authority, who alerted me and alerted their audiences to what Hallow is currently doing. So I'm going to go through some of those responses from some of the authorities in the Catholic world. But I also want to talk a little bit before we get into that about why I'm covering this topic in the first place. One of the reasons is because I just want to cover Christian entrepreneurs and Christian entrepreneurship, and when it's done right and when it's done wrong. And I think this is a perfect example of it being done wrong. Unfortunately, as I said, I was a fan and a subscriber, and I've paid for the app before, but no longer. Since it has happened that Liam Neeson continues to narrate C.S. Lewis quotes every day during the season of Advent, which we're currently coming towards the end of, I haven't seen any of the big Catholic names promoting Hallow anymore. I haven't seen Matt Frad doing it on Pints with Aquinas. I haven't seen Laura Horn doing it on her videos. And in fact, she even made a parody about what's gone on with them, kind of as a sign. I took it, that's the way that I interpreted it, at least, that these guys are not worth promoting anymore. It's a pretty sad thing. The reason in particular, like going to the core value of who we are at Lionheart's Discipleship, the reason why I want to cover it today is because this channel, podcast, wherever it is that you're watching or listening to this, is about bold discipleship. And at the core of bold discipleship means following Jesus in a way where we recognize and we take ownership of the fact that perfect love casts out all fear. So at the core is helping people, helping you as disciples of Christ, as brothers and sisters of mine in Christ, to conquer your fears. Now, what I found in my own journey of conquering fears is that when we're freed from the chains of fear in our lives, that we're freed up to step into positions of leadership. We become thought leaders. And I don't mean that so much in the sense of becoming like a social media influencer or anything like that. I mean it more in the sense of taking on leadership, even if it's just in our own circle of friends, in a church community, that sort of thing. It often leads to entrepreneurship. And I'm passionate about entrepreneurship. I've only just this week started the Catholic Entrepreneurs Network as a Facebook group just to begin with, but it will expand into other things moving forward. And the reason I've done that is because the leadership that we step into when we begin to conquer our fears often leads to entrepreneurship. And I'm sure that's what happened with Alex Jones, the CEO of Hallow. And as we step into entrepreneurship and begin using our gifts in profound ways to have influence on other people, Look, that's a good thing. That's a very good thing. But if we haven't overcome all of our fears, there can be temptations there. And I'm not saying wait until you've overcome every fear in your life or every weakness or every wound in your life before you launch into the calling, the unique call to sanctity that you believe that God has put on your heart. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is we have to be aware of the temptations that come up. And what I feel like, what I see here is that there's been a temptation to grow beyond Alex Jones's wildest dreams, really, and him and his team, unfortunately, have given into that. So this is a bit of a sad story, but I think that there is a lot that we can learn from it, and I'm going to go through some of what I think are the best responses to that. Yes, so I'm going to get some screen sharing happening here. Just in a second. Just still learning how to use this. Share screen. Okay, where am I going? I am going. I've got some little slides for you on Canva. So I'm going to share that with you now. There you go. There's my slides. I'm going to present that full screen so that you have the best view possible. But I'm also going to, no, where do I want this? That's where I want it. Okay, so a lesson in business for the Catholic economy. I also believe, and what I'm trying to do here, my goal, my mission here is to use this channel to grow what I call the Catholic economy. So the first thing I want to do is look at and share with you how I first found out about this. And I found out simply because I'm subscribing to spiritualdirection.com and their formation and their emails from Dan Burke. We're very lucky to be having Dan Burke coming down to Australia, down to the Immaculata Mission School to do a marriage retreat with his wife for us. So very much looking forward to that. But this is what Dan Burke said in his email, which really surprised me when I first found out about it. He said, "Scandal. Is this a scandal? Is it really that bad?" Yes, because Neeson, who admits he was raised Catholic, was heavily involved during the campaign, tragically successful to legalize abortion in his native country, Ireland, in 2018 with the repealing of their Eighth Amendment. As a public figure and an outspoken advocate of the murder of unborn children, it's unthinkable to me and to many that he would be included in Hallow's Advent meditations. In other words, the same voice that was heard in anti-Catholic pro-abortion video advertisements in Ireland will be offering prayerful reflections to Catholics this sacred season. No matter how talented an actor, Neeson's public stance should unequivocally disqualify him as a choice to lead Catholics in prayer or any spiritual exercise. Some might argue that his private views on the slaughter of unborn children are private and not of concern. This is part of the defense that Hallow made. They did put out an announcement, a communication defending their decision to bring Neeson on as their voice leader in meditation. And we're going to look a little bit more at that from what Kennedy Hall had to say about it. I wouldn't concede this point, but instead add greater clarification. His views are not privately held. He's clearly an activist whose involvement in Irish public discourse resulted in the legalization of the murder of unborn children. And that's not to say that his involvement in the campaign is the reason why it was legalized, but he was actively a part of that. He wanted to be a part of it. Okay. Further, but Hallow is defending their decision, saying that it was made with prayer and discernment. This is Dan Burke, have taught and written about discernment for years, and I can tell you with assurance There is no sound and thorough discernment process that could lead one to commit the grave sin of scandal, no matter how sincere. To offer a charitable assumption, Hallow's advisors are exemplary and well formed people. However, I have to believe that none of them looked into just how active Neeson was and is in the pro death cause. After some conversation with Hallow's leadership, it seems clear to me that though very sincere, they don't have a sound understanding of the sin of scandal or the gravity of the situation. Instead, they use other decision points that argue for the greater good they perceive is gained by this decision. The end never justifies the means. As such, I have a serious issue with this decision, even while recognizing that the app has no doubt been spiritually beneficial to many, maybe even you. It raises the question confronting faithful Catholics with increasing frequency. What do we do when businesses and institutions, such as universities, for example, that we trust and perhaps even support and which call themselves Catholic, choose to feature or honor celebrities or politicians who not only hold but actively campaign for seriously sinful positions and actions? So I agree with that. I don't think that they have much of a leg to stand on, unfortunately. So Kennedy Hall had something to say on this. I'm actually going to share this another way because my streaming software recommends that I share it another way. Um, so first I have to stop here. Then I've got to bring it up in another folder. So I'm going to do that. And the reason I'm sharing his breakdown of it is he went really in depth. He did a really good job at it, and I feel like he deserves some credit for that. Just 1 second. Kennedy. So I'm pulling the video up on my desktop, and then it should allow me to share it from my streaming software here. Okay, there it is. There it is. And now to present. Share a video file. Okay, let's have a listen.
Is there a dark side to the app Hallow? Maybe you've heard of the recent scandal where they hired Liam Neeson, who is an avowed supporter of the legalization, civilizational suicide, really is what we should call it, of abortion, the end of the life of the unborn in his native Ireland. He actually campaigned for that with Amnesty International. You can look up a video he did where he talked about basically unchaining women from the shackles of the oppressive regime that keeps them from having abortions, that sort of thing. I think it was published in 2018 when Ireland embraced that path they went on, which was very sad for a country that was formerly known as being very strongly Catholic. But there's another side to the Hallow saga that I want to get to here. And there's an investor in the app, which is very problematic. And it's problematic because Hallow masquerades, or I should say, presents itself as a Catholic company helping people grow in holiness. And that alone makes this a little bit troubling. And we're going to get to that in just a second. But first, I'd like to talk to you about the Canadian Martyrs Men's Conference coming up in just under 3 months. The Canadian Martyrs Men's Conference is happening in the new year. Oopsie daisy. In February 17th, the weekend of the 16th, 17th, 18th, my goodness, in Stratford, Ontario. It's at the Best Western Hotel with Mass earlier in the day at the chapel just down the road, about 15-minute drive. The day is chock full of all you could hope for in a great men's conference. Speakers such as Father Michel Rion, who is the keynote, Tim Flanders, and myself giving talks as well. The schedule starts with Mass. Actually, the night before, there is a meet and greet, which is selling out, by the way. Right now, there is room for 40 people. We're not sure if we can get a bigger room at the pub, but there's a local pub that we'd like to go to in order to get to know each other the day before the event. And so reserve that quickly if you're hoping to attend that, because it is at this moment filling up. The day is full of speakers and food and friends and fun and fellowship and all those good things. And we actually have sponsors that help us make sure everybody gets a cigar who attends this event. And I do want to just say one thing before we continue here. This is something that I promote as an act of love and devotion for the Catholic Church. It's not actually something that I'm getting paid to do. Not that that's anyone's business, but I wanted to put that forth because I want people to know that this is something that I believe needs to take place. It's the only traditional Catholic men's conference in North America, and this is put on by the Holy Name Society of our St. Pius X Priory in Southwestern Ontario. So please check out the link in the description if you'd like to come to this event. The night before, reservations are filling up, so get to those quickly if you've already bought a ticket.
All right, my apologies for that. I cut a smaller version of the video, but I put the full video on there. But anyway, in the smaller version of the video, the one that I wanted to share with you, Kennedy Hall is simply pointing out the reasons, the defense that Hallow made for themselves, which is simply that we are using Liam Neeson because of his voice, because his voice is basically so prayerful, and that the majority of people are not going to take scandal at this. In fact, they thought nobody should really take scandal at it because it's just about his voice. It's about the fact that he was involved in Narnia, that he was Aslan, and everyone should enjoy his voice because of that. So I don't think that is really a good reason. And as you saw before, neither does Dan Burke. And neither does the Catholic CEO. If you haven't heard of the Catholic CEO and you're interested or you are involved in a business and you were a Catholic person, I do recommend that you subscribe to his emails. He has really good, just inspiring sort of emails. And I want to share his response with you because he's the only other big name other than Dan Burke and Kennedy Hall, which are, I wouldn't call them big names, but they do have some sort of international influence. And so I want to just go through what he said in the email that he sent out about this. So his name is Henry Kutana, as you can see. So he said, the controversy about the Hallow app continues. People are noting that a pro-death, secular activist, popular and famous actor who was hired to be the public face of the app. His activities included a photo thumbnail and leading certain prayer meditations. So it wasn't just that they were using his voice. I think that's one of the main points that Henry is trying to hit on. Kennedy hit on it too. It wasn't just that they were using his voice. It was that he was front and center. He did an ad campaign where him and Jonathan Rumi, who is Jesus in The Chosen, sat together and talked about Advent and talked about why Hallow is such a wonderful and prayerful app. Tens of millions of dollars in capital was raised to build and promote the app. And we'll get into who one of the investors was. That's something else that Kennedy Hall covered that I wanted to share from him. The app itself says that it's a Catholic business. It implies that we should set aside the personal, private opinions of the actor and just focus on his impressive voice, name recognition, and the Catholic nature of the prayers. Is it incorrect? You cannot claim to be a Catholic business if you hire as your spokesperson or prayer leader someone whose public views are against church teachings, period. Certainly, if you are a not-for-profit apostolate, you wouldn't do this. You shouldn't do it for a private business either, and that's what Hallow is, a private business. If you do, you're trying to make money off a famous person whose views are against the Catholic faith. Is that morally correct? No, it's morally egregious. Remember, I'm not talking about you hiring some low-level employee who isn't Catholic. That person just does his job and stays quiet. He's not your spokesperson. He's not your face and image. He's just a guy doing a job. In all charity and justice, you can and should give that guy a job. But if you're hiring a famous actor to be your spokesperson and lead some prayers, who actively campaigns against the teachings of your faith, how can that be good? Like, in what realm can that be a good thing? You may be successful, but you cannot claim to be a Catholic business. And he always signs off his emails this way. He always says, God bless you and your family. You can be Catholic and successful in business. Believe it. And he himself has been Catholic and successful in business. And he's done so without compromising his beliefs the same way that Alex Jones and the team at Hallow have. And so, because this is happening, and look, it's not just Alex and the team at Hallow. It seems like whenever any like big Catholic name becomes really big, they're really on the brink of making a lot of money, but also that their influence has become so big. And I think for them, I think at least in my charitable interpretation, it's about the influence. When they reach that amount of people who are buying into their message, subscribing to their content, paying to subscribe to their content, it seems as though there is a huge temptation to give into the way that mainstream business does things. You know how they talk about, oh, it's just business, and then that means that you can be a jerk, like you can throw your morals out of the window, and that's just not how it works in the spiritual realm. There is a spiritual consequence, no matter what your influence is. And if your influence is greater than your spiritual consequence as a person who has influence over so many people is going to be bigger too. So that's why I've started this Catholic Entrepreneurs Network, which is only just a little group on Facebook. Just look it up on Facebook if you use Facebook, and answer a few questions, and I'll let you in, because I think Catholics of good standing need to come together, conquer their fears, be bold in discipleship, discern entrepreneurship, because I believe that God actually wants more entrepreneurs. I believe that he wants to see more small businesses flourish, because you see what happens when businesses become too big. The temptation becomes too large. In Hallow's defense of themselves, they said that they prayerfully discerned the decision to take on Liam Neeson. And you saw that in what I just shared to you before from Dan Burke at spiritualdirection.com. And he's like, as you saw, he said, I don't see how this has been prayerfully discerned. How can you say that you're actively prayerfully discerning something and then still go ahead and participate and promote somebody who promotes literally the worst mortal sin that exists? I mean, that's really what this is. And I think too, like as I said at the beginning, we have to be very aware of our weaknesses in this regard, because you can go to discernment. You can go and pray to discern something. Very simply, you can sit down in prayer and like Hallow teaches people this. That's the thing. They teach people to sit down quietly, to still themselves, to try their best to tune into the voice of God in their heart, the vox interioris, as St. Thomas Aquinas called it. And in the most simple instantiation of that, what would you do? You'd sit down, you'd close your eyes, you'd take a few deep breaths and say, Lord Jesus, we have this amazing opportunity to bring on one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. It's a step up from Jonathan Rumi. It's a step up from Jim Caviezel. And it's even a step up in the eyes of the world from Mark Wahlberg, who, there's a few questionable things about him too. To step up from all those things. So Jesus, tell me, like, do you think it's a good idea if we take on Liam Neeson to be like our spokesperson for our Advent meditations? It just looks so perfectly in terms of the optics, because he was the voice of Aslan in the Narnia movies. And then you sit and listen to your heart. But I'm sure, as we all know, if we're very emotionally attached to the outcome of a question that we bring to prayer, it's really hard to get our emotional attachment away from that to really tune into what God is trying to say to us. And I, again, like in my charitable interpretation of what's gone on here, I feel like this has been the problem. That perhaps Alex and his team were just not well tuned in enough to what God was going to say, because the prospect of having Liam Neeson come on and be a spokesperson for them and to lead their Advent meditations was just too great. It was so overwhelmingly exciting for them, and so they said yes to it. Hallow was already a successful operation. They were already doing really well. They were already getting so many hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of downloads from people around the world. They were translating their stuff into other languages, well, they still are. And yet to do this it's to be the first nail in the coffin for them. It's to be the first nail in the coffin because they've compromised on the moral fiber of what they're trying to do, be a Catholic prayer and meditation app. And they've given us the perfect example of how to not, like, how do you not discern something? Like, how do you know you haven't discerned something? If there is that emotional attachment and you're just trying to listen to the voice of God to let you know whether you're making the right decision or whether you should pursue a path or not, the self-aware noticing an emotional attachment here. So I need to step back. I need to step back and try and surrender the emotional attachment before I then go back and ask the question again. We have to do our best to try and purge ourselves of these emotional attachments in prayer before we can allow ourselves to be kind of like a blank slate before God as much as possible, right? Just as much as possible. The other thing that can make it easier is if we can't pull ourselves back from that emotional attachment, and I can tell you when money is involved and when influence and power are involved, it's really hard to do that. Then it comes down to, who are your trusted mentors? What leadership are you going to, Alex? Like, obviously you're a very influential person and a leader yourself, but who are you going to for spiritual direction? Who are you going to as your mentor and your coach who can help you in this regard? And it just doesn't seem like this was done in any adequate way. And because this is a Catholic endeavor, like, the business is a Catholic business. It's all about prayer, and in front of the whole world, Alex Jones and the team at Hallow have shown everyone how not to prayerfully discern something. It's quite an embarrassment. Entrepreneurship attracts you if you're involved in a Catholic business, if you work for a Catholic business or you'd like to start one. Join the Catholic Entrepreneurs Network, and we can keep each other accountable so that we don't do things like this. Because the thing is, if they had held to their values and said, look, even if Liam Neeson had approached them and said, I want to do Advent meditations based on C.S. Lewis, and I don't think that's how it went, right? Like, they must have propositioned him. They must have. But to be able to even step back from that, the initial glow of that proposition, and say, look, morally speaking, we don't think this is a good idea. We're gonna step back away from here. But that's not what they did. So look, join the Catholic Entrepreneurs Group network, and we can have and tap into the divine advantage, because God does want good Catholic people and Christian people and kingdom-minded people to flourish in their business. He absolutely wants it. So let's take this journey together, my friends, as we come up to Christmas. Unsubscribe from your Hallow, because that's the other problem here too, is that taking part in the app when you know what Liam Neeson's been involved in, and I think the majority of the users of Hallow who are still using it, who haven't unsubscribed, who haven't stopped promoting it, don't know what he's been involved in. But if you do, you need to step away and find an alternative. Augustine Institute, it's called the Amen app. And look, it's not exactly the same as Hallow, but if you're looking for audio meditations, it's pretty good too. So it looks, you pull it up on your phone, yeah, it looks like that, comes up like that. You've got your mass readings, you've got all sorts of different reflections, some of them which I would say are even better than what was on Hallow. And they're donor funded, and they're funded by the business of the Augustine Institute at Catholic University. So I would recommend, if you're looking for something else in the immediate term, I would recommend turning to the Augustine Institute and the Amen app. And I might close things off there, but please do give this video a like, a share, subscribe, or follow, depending on whether you're listening or watching on Instagram, on YouTube, on my Facebook profile, Chris on a Mission, which is public. Anybody can follow me there. Or you are listening to the audio. My content is going out to all of those places. So thanks very much for watching and listening, guys. God bless you all. Jesus is King. Ave Christus Rex. And have a beautiful, amazing, reflective, and if you need to be discerning things, then discern things well, listening to the voice of God and not to your own emotional attachments during your Christmas period. And we'll be coming up really soon with some more content based on formation, based on the new year, all sorts of things like that coming your way, guys. So thanks very much for tuning in once again. I'm going to end the stream there. Happy to respond to your questions in the comments later on. Thanks and God bless.